From the New Arts and Media Studios in River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. I had occasion yesterday to do something online that I do occasionally, pretty regularly actually. There was a guy who commented on a post regarding guns. The original post was something having to do with sensible gun reform, gun safety reform. And, of course, there's always got to be at least one guy who says, he quotes, "shall not be infringed" regarding the Second Amendment. Well, whenever I see a post or a comment defending the Second Amendment in such absolute terms, I just ask a very simple question. I write the same 3 words. I've done this dozens and dozens and dozens of times over the years. And that is this: please define, quote, arms, unquote. Please define arms. And I can tell you, in my experience, I have never, to my knowledge at least, I check my notifications, I've never had a response. That's when they shut up. They've got absolutely nothing to say. They have no answer to that question. So if you find yourself in a conversation, or God forbid, a debate with a Second Amendment enthusiast, first of all, that's something you don't want to do. But if you're there, there's my tip. Just write those 3 magic words. Please define arms. And I guarantee you will not hear back from that person. They have no answer for it. Let's just for a moment here review the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, there's a lot you can argue there, and most of what you can argue will fall on deaf ears to a Second Amendment purist, and they'll be able to argue, convoluted as their arguments are, they will absolutely believe in their hearts that they're running rings around you logically on almost anything else pertaining to that amendment. Well-regulated militia, that's kind of a, in my mind, that's also a slam dunk argument, but not in their mind. They've got all sorts of arguments against that, and getting down to the punctuation of the amendment itself. But the word arms, that's what stops them in their tracks. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I imagine you know where this is going, right? If they were to try to respond to this, they know it's going down a rabbit hole that they'll never escape. Well, okay. What are arms? Are pistols arms? Are hunting rifles? Assault rifles? Bazookas? Missile launchers? Nuclear bombs? Yeah, it's all arms. That's a very general term. So if they try to define it as, well, of course it doesn't include nuclear bombs. Oh, all right, well, we're getting somewhere. Well, where do you draw the line then? And then if they try to draw an arbitrary line, well, I can have an AR-15 to protect my family from the marauders. All you have to do is ask them, well, why? Why is that the cutoff? Who decided that? You've already admitted, and see, this is the argument you never have to have because they never engage. But if by some freak chance they do try to engage, that's the best way to win an argument with one of these guys. All right, define arms that you have a right to, and that right shall not be infringed. They're going to admit that nuclear weapons aren't on that list. So then it's just a matter of where you draw the line. And when they do draw that line above AR-15s, you just ask them why. Where does it say that? Anywhere. The founders, of course, all they had were muskets. So these guys who love to be originalists regarding the Constitution, for them to draw an arbitrary line as to what's included in that Second Amendment and what isn't, is purely arbitrary and capricious, as the lawyers say. So I just recommend this. I've never once gotten into an argument, the one I just described, because they don't engage. They stop. They fall silent. I've done this dozens of times. So whether it's in person or in an online comment thread, just write those 3 magic words. Please define arms. And that'll shut them down. They're done. And I'd like to think, this is the optimist in me, that maybe in their silence, they may be silent in the comment thread, but their own mind hasn't gone silent. I just really wonder what they're thinking in those little heads of theirs. And I like to think, again, in my optimism, that maybe I've made a point. Maybe they are having some doubts. Is that possible? I don't know. You fight battles where you can. Now, when it comes to guns, I'm an extremist. I'm way off the charts. Nobody agrees with me on guns. I think every last one of them ought to be melted. I don't believe in hunting. I don't believe in target shooting. I don't believe in guns as a sport. They're too dangerous just to have around. And I know I'm completely extreme on this. Nobody agrees with me. I don't really expect anybody to agree with me. All those scare tactics that Republicans use. Oh, the Democrats want to take away your guns. Of course it's not true. I want to take away your guns. Yeah, I do. But it's just me. I don't know if there's anybody else in the world who agrees with me. Yeah, I want to take away every gun. Nobody needs a gun. You don't need it for defense. You don't need it for hunting. Hunting is cruel. Killing animals is abhorrent. And someday we'll look back historically and say, we used to shoot animals with guns? And we'll be just horrified by the thought. If the world progresses in the way I hope it progresses. So yeah, I have no patience at all for hunters, for sport shooters, and especially for those sort of survivalists who think they have to defend themselves against hordes of people gone wild, or especially defend themselves against a tyrannical government. They have to have a big load of AR-15s and other automatic weapons in their bunkers with big rooms full of ammunition just ready for war. The malicious survivalist types. No. I got no patience for them. I got no patience for anybody regarding guns. But that's just me. I just want to make it harder to hurt each other, and I especially want to make it harder to commit suicide. If you want to commit suicide, you got to jump off a building or put your head in an oven or whatever other methods there are. People will still do it, but it just makes it harder. It's a split second, let's do it, put a gun to the head, boom, it's over. It's too easy. It makes it way too easy. And I don't know what the numbers are, but a great percentage of gun deaths are suicide. It's like, half of them or more? I forget what the numbers are. So I'd like to make it harder to commit suicide. If you're going to do it, you got to work at it. And in the time you spend working on it, maybe you'll change your mind. Now, I've mentioned suicide a couple of times, so what I'm obligated to do, and I think this is the right thing to do, is mention the Suicide Hotline. If you have such thoughts, please call 800-273-8255. 800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Available 24 hours, languages English and Spanish. All right, there you go. Please define arms. Speaking of never-ending debates with silly people, I came across something else recently, and this is a list of services provided by the United States federal government. Doesn't even mention state governments, which you could add to this list. This is reasons why we're already a democratic socialist nation. And you'll see these occasionally. Things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. We're already a socialist, or at least a democratic socialist nation. I guess the point is to help people not be so scared of socialism and all the ridiculous lies that the right wing will tell you about how we're becoming Venezuela. that how socialism will wind up killing us all. Well, I've never seen quite a comprehensive list as this. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare services, disability assistance, food stamps, WIC, food assistance programs, unemployment benefits, employment training, public schools, colleges, national test services, federal student loans, Department of Justice, courts, justice services. As I read these, please tell me which ones you'd like to privatize. I imagine there might be one or two as we go along. If you're a real Rand Paul libertarian type, you want to privatize a lot of these. I can't imagine. How could we eliminate any of these or privatize any of these? It's hard for me, myself, to imagine. Let's see. Federal student loans, Department of Justice, courts, justice services, public defenders, National Intelligence Agency, CIA, FBI, Secret Service, police, state troopers, fire departments, EMTs, forest fire services, prisons, jails, parole, ambassadors, embassies, Environmental Protection Agency, election and voting. That's 1/3 of the list right there. There are 3 columns. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, I don't know, 23 or 4 or 5. There's like 75 items on this list. It just goes on and on. So that's pretty comprehensive. We're already a democratic socialist or a socialist democratic nation, whatever you want to call it. So the fear tactics are silly and ridiculous. You want to hear the rest of the list? Why not? We got time. NASA, space program. Again, as you're listening to these, think about which ones you want to privatize, which ones you want to eliminate as things, items, programs that the federal government, that we as a people collectively together decided this would be a good idea for us to fund together. These are public endeavors. You decide which ones you'd like to strip from the public realm and either eliminate them entirely or make them private. FEMA, disaster relief, National Emergency Services, USPS, PBS, Peace Corps, public hospitals, clinics, public libraries and museums, public beaches, parks, public buses, subways, waste systems services, streets, snow removal, trash collection, Food and Drug Administration, Department of Health and Human Services, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Surgeon General, medical research, medical emergency services, water management, food supply management, roads, highways, bridges, government monuments, national parks, Department of Education, Department of Energy Services, alternate energy research. Okay, I'm 2/3 of the way through. Which ones do you want to privatize or eliminate? I don't mean to be quite so glib about this, but is it kind of easy to talk down an alarmist, a right-winger? It's hard for me to imagine. Okay, let me just think about this. Okay, let's see. They'd make a strong argument against PBS. All right, I'll give you that one. That's an easier argument to make. Of course, I disagree, but it's an easier argument anyway. You want to have all private prisons and jails? Private policing in general? You want to not have any ambassadors or embassies? You want to make elections and voting a private enterprise? Let's just make it all for profit. Eliminate public schools and colleges. Just make them all private schools and colleges. Yeah, I imagine you'll find a few radicals, but you're not going to find your average run-of-the-mill neighborhood Republican who wants to eliminate any of these or even make them private. Here, let's finish the list just for the fun of it here. State Department, government staff salaries, government buildings, equipment, the White House, U.S. Senate, House of Representatives, Supreme Court, Attorney General. I mean, we should have a government, some kind of government, shouldn't we? Even if you're there just to fulfill your right-wing agenda. Supreme Court, Attorney General, Department of Defense, active duty military. Yeah, you want you right-wingers, you love the military, right? Wars, military equipment, Department of Veterans Affairs, Veteran Administration and Hospitals, Veterans Benefits, Agriculture, Farm Services, Small Business Administration, IRS, Department of Treasury, FCC, Census Bureau, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Public Housing, Department of Homeland Security, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Immigration Services, ICE, that's Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, Farmer Assistance, and then the last one they have with an asterisk is kind of interesting, corporate welfare. From that whole list I just gave you, if they put these in order of money spent, I think corporate welfare would be high on that list, right under the military spending. Things like food stamps and WIC and PBS, things like that, are chump change. It's a couple of nickels out of every taxpayer's pocket. It's nothing. But anything military related and corporate welfare, oof, those are the big ones on the list. Yeah, I'd like to see this listed by order of amount. Let me read what the top of this little graphic says. The U.S. government provides many benefits of democratic socialism to citizens, benefits that could be considered elements of the common good, and help define the American way of life. Through taxation, citizens put capital in a pool for the shared use of all to financially support these items. This list is extensive, but only a partial accounting of the benefits. So, like my snarky little define arms argument, I think this is a pretty effective post. Again, a right-winger could pick out a few things that he'd like to eliminate or privatize, but when you look at the list as a whole, it's pretty hard to argue that basic democratic socialism is the norm, and without it, I mean, it's hard to imagine any modern nation without these services paid for collectively. We've all decided together that these are part of what this post calls the common good. By the way, I want to give credit. Somebody called the Grandmother Party. I'll have to look up and see who they are. I've never heard of them before. The Grandmother Party posted this. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and tell you that after looking at a list like this, this is why I am not a social democrat. And, you know, I've said democratic socialist a couple times because that's the way this post says it. But it does kind of make a difference, the order of the words. If you're a social democrat, that means you're, at least this is the way I think of it. This is not an ultimate definition, okay? This is not a dictionary definition. This is my own interpretation, okay? If you're a social democrat, that's a capital D Democrat, as in the Democratic Party of the United States. And then with that, you kind of include the labor parties in Europe. They're certainly more left than the American Democrats, but generally they're an alliance. And all of these public services, of course, fall into that social democrats. When you reverse the words, and again, this is just my interpretation. You're going to find 100 different definitions. But for my way of thinking, this is an easy way to think about it. When you reverse the words and you say a democratic socialist, now the qualifier, the adjective, is democratic, and the noun is socialist, as opposed to the other way around. So what I'm talking about now is a democratic socialist. And a socialist goes way beyond what we've been talking about so far. The central definition of socialism, and again, this is me, there are way too many definitions, competing definitions out there. I'm just giving you my opinion. A socialist means anti-capitalist. Everything we've been describing so far allows for capitalism. Even many people, they will embrace capitalism, as in private ownership of capital. That's not me. Let's be clear. I am at the very least a socialist. I'd like to go beyond that. I'd like to go full social anarchism, but let's stop at socialism for a moment. That means, very simply, that capitalism is no longer tolerated. No more private ownership of capital. Capital becomes part of the common good, and democracy enters into the workplace. Even though we have all of these wonderful services that I've mentioned, we still have a world where wealth accumulates and is naturally pushed to the higher rungs of the wealth community. It's just a nature of the beast. There's no democracy in the workplace. The boss makes the rules, the owner makes the rules, and you can love it or leave it. And if you do choose to leave it, we have a little bit of freedom in this country still, then you have a choice. You can try to find employment and earn your living somewhere that reflects your values and respects you as a person, and those are few and far between. Good luck finding any position like that. Or you can re-enter the workforce and just find another private company that will again own you and allow for little or zero democracy in the workplace. Now, I can hear you now. A lot of people like their jobs. They have a certain amount of autonomy. They enjoy what they do. They feel like they have a good relationship with their coworkers and maybe even their boss. They can make decisions about how they do their work. Sure, there are lots of jobs like that. But generally, overall, across the board, systematically, no. If you're in that situation, good for you. I'm happy for you. But don't for a second think that's the common experience of the American worker. No, the American worker, the minute they walk into the workplace, have given up all of those wonderful rights that they enjoy out in the world where we have this fantastic Bill of Rights and we have freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and we've got all of it. But try exercising those rights in the workplace and see where it gets you. Where did it get Colin Kaepernick in his workplace? Where does it get anybody? There's no democracy. So I am not, as I've described here, a social democrat, which still allows for and even embraces capitalism, private ownership, private profit. Nope. I am a democratic socialist. A socialist is anti-capitalism. It's pro-democracy. It's worker-owned entities with workplace democracy. If you have rights in the real world, you ought to have those same rights when you walk onto the factory floor. It's where you spend most of your waking hours. It's where a lot of people spend 8-10 hours a day. Now, this is an old argument. Forgive me for being Captain Obvious here, but I feel like this is one we need to hear out loud occasionally. How in the world is it okay to have rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and just have that just tossed in the trash can every time you walk into work? It's crazy. So this list, this wonderful list here of all these public services, yeah, it's great. Yes, I think they should be public services. I think they should be part of the common good. But let's be honest, we still have an awful lot of damn problems. Let's go beyond my little petty complaints about workplace democracy. All of these services, Food and Drug Administration, and yet people still live in food deserts. 1/4 of American children are food insecure. We've got public roads, highways, and bridges, but so many of them are deteriorated to the point of being unsafe. We've got Medicaid, we've got Medicare, and yet tens of thousands of people are underinsured or not insured at all, and tens of thousands of people die because of it. So as great as these services are, they're not really getting us over the hump. Problems still persist. Problems that aren't baked in, they're not necessary. They're not just, I refuse to just throw up my hands and say, well, we're always going to have illiterate people, despite the fact that we have all these public schools and libraries. No, I don't accept that for a minute. So as great as all these services are, they're not doing the ultimate job. No, I don't want to get rid of them. No, not for a second. Do I want to get rid of them? What I want to get rid of is capitalism. And what they're calling democratic socialism, which is actually backwards, it's social democracy, is inadequate. It's good compared to the alternative, which is the right-wing privatize everything and just let the chips fall. Yeah, it's obviously better than that. On the spectrum, it's 1,000 times better than that. But it's still not only halfway or less than halfway to where we need to be. And that's real socialism, the end of capitalism. And anything short of that is just surrendering tens of thousands, millions of people to hardship and suffering, to ignorance and hunger, to illness and early death. America is the most schizophrenic place. We've got this mega rich elite. They got more money they could ever spend in 1,000 lifetimes. We have this kind of upper middle class bourgeoisie that are very comfortable. We have the struggling middle class who still don't dare to question the system because they think they're on the path to security and wealth. They have this sort of addiction for chasing the dream. So they don't want to upset anything. They want the rules exactly as they are because they think they're right on the brink of winning. And that's a really nice little game that the folks in charge have set up here. We get enough people to think that they're on deck, they won't question the batting order. And then the rest of us, the half of the population who's one paycheck away from bankruptcy, and then a good quarter of the population that is really struggling. I mean, having a tough time feeding their kids, deciding whether or not to pay for food or medicine or rent this month. I mean, we got a lot of people in that position. Even with all of this collective effort going into the common good, we're like a halfway nation. We're halfway there. We got about half of what we need. But that ain't enough. You want to be halfway healthy? You want to be on a trip, a destination, and be halfway there and get stuck in the mud and never get the rest of the way? That's where America is. One way or another, day in and day out, I'm making the case on this program to go left with me. Don't be afraid of going left. We got to go full socialist. And even there, if you're a regular listener to this program, you know that that's not as far as I want to go. That's a compromise for me. Full socialism is a compromise for me because I want to be social anarchist. And I want to totally separate work from money. I consider housing, food, health, education, and even recreation and the arts. I consider every one of them a human right, all to be considered within the common good, all to be provided by the collective. Every bit of it. Every bit of living a full life should be provided by the common good. We all should be providing for each other. And then when it comes to work, you do whatever you damn well please, however you feel you can best serve that collective. It's entirely up to you. No work should ever be forced on anyone as a threat to your survival. It should not be a deal, a transaction. You put in X amount of hours that we approve of that will serve the bottom line of an owner. This is the deal we're making with you. You provide value. You create wealth for the owner class, and we will allow you to survive. And if you do it really well, we'll give you extra perks, and you can have a swimming pool and a new car and a nice vacation every year or two. Yeah, we're about halfway where we need to be, at best. 3/4 of where we ought to be is full-blown socialism, and all the way we need to be is social anarchism. That's where people are free to do whatever the hell they want. All needs are taken care of, and all work becomes 100% by choice, unforced. Yeah, we've already got a lot of so-called socialism happening in all of these public programs, and that's good. But they are not ever going to get us where we need to be. That's all I'm saying. All right. Talk to you tomorrow. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.